When a former monk receives healing powers, an entire town fights to control him. However, he sets his sights on a beautiful music producer, leading him into temptations the church had warned him about. When Deborah Lussan's interview goes wrong on television, Ginny excitedly asks her husband, Elwyn, what is happening? However, the drunken man gets angry at her shouting and starts throwing things. Because of this, Ginny calls Bill, who later confronts the drunk husband. He reminds Elwyn that he has been in and out of jail and advises him to focus on fixing his home. In response, Elwyn simply breaks another plate. Just then, Elwyn's friend from rehab, Juvenal, visits, surprised by the state of the house. He helps convince his friend to stop breaking plates but notices Ginny staring in the living room. Bill explains that she is blind and asks Juvenal to check on her. Juvenal approaches the woman for a moment and then leaves. When the other men return to see her, Elwyn and Bill are shocked to see blood on her forehead, though she is not injured. Suddenly, Ginny gets up and starts cleaning, leaving them confused. Looking them in the eyes, the woman declares that she can finally see. Curious, Bill goes to the recovery center days later to look for Juvenal. He speaks with Father Donahue, who recognizes his guest as a former minister turned car salesman. Bill admits that he used to have a congregation, but when they moved to the city, he went bankrupt. Ginny was actually his organist, who used to be blind but can now see. She claimed her sight was restored after Juvenal touched her, calling it a miracle. Donahue doubts this and simply ushers the former minister out the door. The next day, Bill visits his friend Lynn, who works as an assistant to a music producer. The woman was also part of his congregation, therefore, she has spoken with Ginny about the recovery of her sight. Bill shares that Juvenal used to be a Franciscan monk. He speculates that the man discovered his healing powers there but left because the monastery did not support him. The salesman then points out that people will gather around a miracle man like him. With this, Lynn realizes that Bill wants to commercialize Juvenal. Bill doesn't deny it, although he complains that he hasn't been able to contact Juvenal. Donahue knows about his past, so he has been preventing him from seeing the healer. With this in mind, Bill suggests that Lynn enroll in the recovery center. To help with this, he even bought her a new bottle of vodka. Elsewhere, August is being tried for harming a priest during Mass after protesting against his religion. August shows no remorse and even accuses the judge of being unfit to preside over his trial, given that the man was recently excommunicated due to his divorce. The judge reprimands the defendant and holds him in contempt of court while protesters begin shouting outrage. In the background of the courtroom. Finally, Lynn manages to be admitted to the recovery center, where she eventually meets Juvenal. However, the man can tell that she is not dependent on alcohol like the others, so the woman admits that she enrolled to find him on Bill's behalf. Later, August brings Father Nestor from the Franciscan monastery to the center. He introduces him to Donahue before turning to greet Juvenal. He sits with him and Lynn, then proudly shows them the newspaper article about his arrest. Juvenal explains to Lynn that August leads a group called Outrage, or Organization Unifying Traditional Rites as Expected by God. Their goal is to disrupt unorthodox gatherings to restore traditional forms of worship. With that, August invites Juvenal to his Mass on Sunday, but the man declines as he has to work. August gets angry, accusing the man of serving God for years and then turning his back on him. Juvenal defends himself by saying that he is simply doing a different kind of service, but August thinks it's low of him to help drunks. He then says he will wait for him on Sunday before leaving. While driving with Nestor, August asks for information about Juvenal, apparently having heard about his miraculous story and wanting to use it for his organization. Nestor was part of the monastery where Juvenal served, though the priest reveals that he was mostly assigned elsewhere during Juvenal's service. After leading a session that day, Juvenal takes Lynn to his office, allowing her to ask him questions. She wonders why he isn't upset that she deceived her way to him, but the man just shrugs and then asks how she knows Bill. Lynn shares that she used to be a baton twirler in Bill's church. However, she admits that she doesn't really believe in miracles but is curious to know if Juvenal is real. Sensing something in her, Juvenal asks if there's anything she wants him to heal. Lynn hesitates to respond, so the healer touches her and realizes she has a tumor. He wonders if she planned to test his powers with that, and she confesses that she had thought about it. To her surprise, the man tells her she'll be fine before going off to help another patient. Nervously, the woman calls Bill, urging him to discharge her from the center. She also insists that Juvenal is real, as he knew about her condition without her mentioning it. After the call, she searches for Juvenal. To her astonishment, she finds him bleeding from his side and his palms. The woman runs out, frightened. She shares this with Bill that night, claiming that Juvenal had the same wounds as Jesus. At that moment, Lynn receives a call from her boss, asking her to pick him up from the airport. Bill scolds her for going back to work after everything he has told her about Juvenal and Outrage. She assures him that she will attend the Outrage service on Sunday, but Bill notices that she seems scared. He wonders if she's afraid of Juvenal, which she denies. Even so, the former minister comments that she seems different. The next morning, Lynn picks up Artie at the airport but tells him she's going on vacation for a while. Later, Bill goes to the Sunday service and finds Juvenal there. He then joins Lynn in the pews, but both leave the chapel as the service begins. They step outside to discuss things, only to discover a van full of sick people arriving. These people proceed to the front of the chapel where August introduces Juvenal to his congregation. Uncomfortably, Juvenal steps onto the stage, but before he can speak, his eyes land on a patient, Richie. Quickly, Richie approaches him and hugs him, and Juvenal's hands begin to bleed as he touches the patient's head. This alarms the people, and seeing that Juvenal doesn't know what to do, Lynn steps in and pulls him aside. Despite this, August seizes the moment and orders his people to distribute flyers to spread the news. The next day, the leader of the group even takes the photos of Juvenal's miracle to a journalist named Kathy. He claims that in one photo, she gets 3 stories: the miraculous healer, the rapid expansion of Outrage, and the healing of Richie, who had leukemia. Meanwhile, Juvenal hides in Lynn's apartment. The woman finds it strange that he isn't surprised or bothered by the miracles he performs, so Juvenal admits that he's become desensitized to it. The first time it happened was when a crippled boy in Brazil approached him. He felt the urge to touch him, and at that moment, his hands began to bleed. The monastery told him to keep it a secret because they didn't want to attract attention. Juvenal then decides to return to the center, so Lynn drives him there. On the way, he deduces that she's curious whether he's attracted to women or if he's abstaining. Lynn is surprised that he guessed what she was thinking, so Juvenal explains that he simply listens well and observes people. Lynn jokes that she thought he had touched her the other day because she felt something supernatural, but the man admits that he just wanted to caress her. To answer the question in his mind, Juvenal confesses that he is attracted to women, though he has never been in love. Later, Lynn meets with Bill, who wants to know everything she and Juvenal talked about. She mentions that he seemed normal, which the ex-minister doesn't believe. She also mentions that she washed his bloody clothes, but Bill scolds her for not keeping them. The woman accuses her friend of wanting to exploit Juvenal, but Bill defends himself, saying he just wants people to know about the miracle. He considers putting him on television, but Lynn refuses to turn the healer into a spectacle, leaving in anger. Meanwhile, Bill meets with August, emphasizing that both of them want to spread the news about Juvenal. He even sympathizes with the fact that the newspaper wrote about the missionary but didn't even mention August or Richie. With this, Bill looks over the photos and pamphlets that August prepared, offering to review them to make them more appealing to the public. At the same time, Antoinette, Richie's mother, is also working to ensure that people know Juvenal is genuine, contacting the press. Soon, Bill approaches Juvenal in the center and tries to convince him to go to the press to tell his story in his own way. He even suggests that he write a book about his life. Juvenal asks what he could write about, so Bill suggests talking about how he changes people. Besides the sick, the former minister insists that he also changes people like Lynn for the better. This finally piques Juvenal's interest. Eventually, Richie's story is published, but there isn't a word about Outrage, which enrages August. He rants that he can't even get close to Juvenal to spread the word about Outrage, as Donahue refuses to let him see him. Meanwhile, Juvenal visits Lynn, seeking some peace away from the reporters. He also admits to her that he has been wanting to see her, a feeling that Lynn reciprocated. With that, Juvenal kisses her. During this time, Bill manages to convince the talk show host, Deborah, to schedule an interview with the healer. He also approaches Kathy later to sell her exclusive access to Juvenal, although he wants a large share of the publication profits. To make her agree, he tells her where the healer is at that moment. Meanwhile, Juvenal has consummated his romance with Lynn. However, the woman hesitates to take things seriously, given the fame of her new lover and his connections with a religious order. Despite this, the two enjoy the day as a couple. To calm her nerves, Juvenal admits that he has had experience before, though he later discovered that his first partner was a woman of the night. This happened right after he left the mission when he spent months drowning his sorrows in liquor. That's how he ended up in the recovery center. While preparing snacks for them later, Lynn warns Juvenal not to trust Bill, as he is a scammer. She warns that the man is selling him, which she knows because Bill wanted her to be his partner. To her surprise, Juvenal tells her to accept the job. Lynn is confused as to why he would let Bill commercialize him after staying low profile for years. She warns him that people will take advantage of him, and just in time, the doorbell rings. Kathy enters uninvited, and the two immediately improvise to give the journalist a false story. They claim that they have been dating for a while since they grew up together, but to Lynn's surprise, Juvenal adds that they are also getting married. Kathy wonders what it's like to be engaged to the healer, and Lynn tells her she's worried, especially because it will be on television. She shares Bill's plans to have Deborah interview Juvenal, which confuses Kathy. The journalist warns them that the host tends to sensationalize everything, so she advises against having Juvenal exposed. Still, the couple assures her that it won't be like that because he knows what's going on. Soon, Kathy's article is published, which allows August to discover where the healer was hiding. Later, he breaks into Lynn's apartment and examines her belongings, even rummaging through her dirty laundry. Days later, August sneaks into the recovery center to reach Juvenal. He claims that Lynn is a wicked woman leading him into temptation. To support this, he shows a photo of the woman with Bill, implying that they are actually a couple. This makes the healer reflect on his relationship. Meanwhile, Lynn also receives the same photo when she arrives at her apartment. Worried, she calls the center to check on Juvenal, only to discover that he has left. Later, Lynn visits Ginny and Elwyn, pleased to find the woman well accompanied by her husband and with the house even tidy. She shows the photo of her and Bill just as Juvenal walks in, revealing that he has been hiding there. Lynn explains that the dress she is wearing in the photo is the same one she had on at Sunday Mass. Ginny also agrees that the photo is obviously fake. This reassures Juvenal of Lynn's loyalty to him. To escape a bit from the media harassment, the couple leaves the city and finds a place where no one knows Juvenal. There, they enjoy being a normal couple, but despite having managed to escape, the healer decides to still attend the interview as he plans to reveal that his healing ability has disappeared. This surprises Lynn, so he explains that after August gave him the photo, he went to a mall to clear his mind. There, he encountered a disabled man whom he tried to heal, but it didn't work. Lynn is scared that he has lost his powers because of her, but he believes that his own lack of faith convinced God to take them away. He plans to go on television to announce that his powers are gone, and after that, they can move and live normally. With this idea, Lynn feels hopeful. Back in the city, Bill convinces Artie to team up to expand the marketing of Juvenal. They talk to Antoinette to get the story of her son, and soon August joins them. However, August judges Antoinette for being a dancer at a club. He insists on knowing where Lynn and Juvenal are, but Antoinette changes the subject, pondering the possibility that the two are romantically involved. This makes August uncomfortable, so Bill asks about his relationships. August claims that outrage doesn't allow women, and Antoinette comments that separating men and women to avoid impure thoughts is what's wrong with the church. This makes his companions laugh, which annoys August even more. He stands up to leave, declaring that he has to do something, which they will read about in the newspaper. Worried, Bill follows the man outside, giving August the chance to accuse him of sending Lynn to defile Juvenal. He calls him a disgrace to God, which offends Bill, causing him to walk away. Soon, Juvenal and Lynn return to their apartment only to find it vandalized. Unbeknownst to them, August returns with a weapon in hand, planning to kill Lynn for his distorted idea of saving the healer. He bursts into the apartment, and Juvenal protects his girlfriend from the intruder. Still, August insists that he is saving the healer from impurity and aims at Lynn. Juvenal hurriedly pushes his hand away before he can shoot, but in the ensuing struggle, August accidentally falls from the balcony. Finally, the day of the interview arrives, and Deborah bombards Juvenal with questions about his faith. She tries to undermine him since the Archbishop refuses to acknowledge his stigmata due to his relationship with Lynn. However, Juvenal declares that he has faith in God, not the church. In another attempt to discredit him, Deborah mentions the editorial deal he signed worth $600,000. This surprises both Juvenal and Lynn, with Lynn being the one who confronts Bill about it backstage. She questions him about deceiving Juvenal into signing a book contract, forcing him to confess that he should receive half of the profits for being the healer's manager. Back in the interview, Deborah calls August, who is severely injured, questioning how the supposed healer ended up hurting the man. Instead of answering, Juvenal goes to August to check on him. Concerned about the host's intentions, Lynn bursts onto the stage to take her boyfriend away. This distracts Deborah enough to allow Juvenal to confront August, who still insists that everything that happened is Lynn's fault. Finally, Juvenal decides where his true faith lies and calls August a fraud. Suddenly, Juvenal's hands start bleeding again, and August regains control of his limbs. He breaks free from his cast, gets up from the wheelchair, and heals completely on national television, leaving everyone amazed. Meanwhile, Lynn takes her boyfriend backstage to escape the cameras. Then, they both get into a car and drive as far away from the city as possible to start a new life, away from the countless speculations about their miracle. If you liked the summary, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. It's free and really helps me continue growing.